It turns out that you can do pretty well for yourself being a top executive at a failed bank. A new report reveals that executives at two of the firms that figured prominently in the financial meltdown, Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns, walked away with huge payouts before the collapse. NBC's senior investigative correspondent, Lisa Myers, reports.
It was the early phase of the financial meltdown last year. First, Bear Stearns was sold to avoid collapse. Then Lehman Brothers went bankrupt. Shareholders lost billions, and thousands of employees lost jobs. But a new study by experts at Harvard Law School titled Wages of Failure found that since 2000, the top 5 executives at each firm had received staggering amounts of cash bonuses and had sold mountains of stock. Bear Stearns executives cashed out about $1.4 billion, and Lehman Brothers $1 billion.
People who invested in these companies should feel betrayed. The whole idea of capitalism is that the people provide their capital and the executives take care of it for us. In this case, the people provided their capital and the executives took it.
The study found that when the firms collapsed, both Bear Stearns CEO James Cain and Lehman CEO Richard Fuld lost about $900 million worth of stock. But the study said they still came out well ahead overall. Cain walked away with $388 million and Fuld $541 million.
They were rewarded hundreds of millions of dollars. And they got that reward for making catastrophic decisions.
Last year, Cain bought 2 condominiums here at the iconic Plaza Hotel in New York City. Price tag, $28 million. Fuld also remains a wealthy man. He has an $8 million estate in Greenwich, Connecticut. Sold his Park Avenue apartment in New York for $26 million this summer. And has a $14 million oceanfront estate in Florida, which he sold to his wife for $100 earlier this year. Shareholders are suing executives of both firms. Gerald Silk represents former Lehman shareholders who claim executives weren't truthful about the firm's financial condition.
Lehman crashed and shareholders lost billions of dollars when Dick Fuld and others walked away personally very, very wealthy.
Okay. NBC's Lisa Myers in Washington. For the study's conclusion pushes for tougher pay oversight, and an important detail to note, one of the report's authors is an advisor to President Obama's pay czar, Kenneth Feinberg. Mr. Feinberg recently instituted some fairly tough salary restrictions for the CEOs whose companies received federal bailout money. But according to the Wall Street Journal, Feinberg is facing enormous pressure from unnamed federal officials to relax executive pay restrictions at American International Group, another institution that is 80% owned now by American taxpayers. Is this a case of the more things change, the more they say the same? Joining us now, former Attorney General and Governor of the state of New York, Eliot Spitzer, who has an article on the AIG report on Slate.com today. Thank you for coming on the show tonight, Eliot Spitzer.
Governor, great to see you. Thank you.
Good to see you. Kenneth Feinberg, the pay czar, is he going to back down on these pay cuts for AIG?
I certainly hope not. And understand he's getting pressure from two sides. One, the folks at AIG who are saying if you cut our pay, people will leave. And on the other side, from the Treasury Department saying we don't want people to leave. You know, there's an old saying, I think it was de Gaulle, who said the graveyards are filled with indispensable men. The AIG folks who are saying we're indispensable, test them. I think it's time to call their bluff. Say to them, you want to leave? Go away. We will replace you at 1/3 the pay. The entire structure of Wall Street pay, as Noel Minow said, is out of control. They're fiduciaries. They are working for shareholders, not trying to fleece the pockets of shareholders, and there's a confusion there.
AIG is now slated to pay another $200 million worth of bonuses in March, and what do you think is going to happen with that? Should that be paid?
Here's the problem. Some of those now are contractually obligated because these contracts were agreed to and signed off on by many people in Treasury and others, some of whom made a big fuss about it, even though they had been told and signed off on it. What we need to do is go back, dig deeper, and reconstruct the entire pay structure on Wall Street. Salaries should be cut. Bonuses should be cut. There should not be these options that survive even in a default context where the shares weren't driven to zero, so when the shares come back, there's still real value there. Executives should be held accountable and should remember they work for shareholders.
Okay, now this is a question I've always wanted to ask an attorney and especially a prosecutor's attorney, and I really don't know what the answer is, but a lot of Americans have really been hurt by this, and their pensions have really been cut by huge numbers. They're not going to come back. So I think a lot of Americans are wondering why some of these people aren't in jail, and why aren't they in jail?
Well, some of them should be. Some of them should be.
Explain what they did, because I think people just think they took money, but they don't know why they're not being prosecuted.
To a great extent, what happened was that and this is not going to lead anybody into a jail cell, but what happened is that compensation committees, boards of directors got together and agreed that they would pay themselves more and more and more over time. And so all of Wall Street started digging in deeper and deeper and taking money that should have been shareholder money, and that's our money because you, I, many others own mutual funds or invested in pension funds. We own these companies, and we as shareholders never pushed back when the executives got together and took more and more of it. Now, some of them are partnerships. That's different. Many of these companies, they were taking shareholder money, and the wages they were paying themselves was simply extravagant, unwarranted, unjustified. Shareholders have to stand up and say enough. Now, in terms of criminal conduct, many of them were simply misleading the public and shareholders about what the risks were and what their portfolios were and what they were worth. And those are instances, there won't be many of them, but some where you can actually take criminal action.
You and sometimes made the cases it's not so much that we need new regulations in Wall Street, it's that the ones we've had have not been enforced at all. But I wanted to ask you about what you just said about shareholders. There's been a culture for years, and I, as a small shareholder myself, you see these proxy statements. They tell you you have to vote with management. I mean, there's no culture in this country that shareholders have any rights at all. Don't we need to change that somehow?
Absolutely. And one way to do it, and I've been, frankly, quite disappointed in the elected controllers of states and cities across the nation because they are fiduciaries. They are the representatives of taxpayers and shareholders. They could stand up and say, we are voting our shares to change the structure, both governing and pay scale. We could also do it through the mutual funds, through the pension funds. So there are many what we call institutional shareholders who should have stood up over time. And, forget looking backwards, looking forwards, they should do it now. Nell Minow talked about how executives had been taking too much. Shareholders should be the ones who make that point. That would change the culture immediately. They could do it. Do we need more government rules? Some would help. But the reality is the government regulators had to pay. Tim Geithner, when he was at the New York Fed, could have stopped all this, should have stopped all this. He didn't.
You just wrote an article today. It's pretty tough about Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner. You called Geithner's disgrace. Why don't you talk
that was the headline. I mean,
you don't write the headlines,
But the argument here is that when AIG was bailed out, tens of billions of dollars were given to the counterparties, Goldman Sachs, UBS, the major banks, 100 cents on the dollar for the CDS positions they had. Not to get technical, they were given everything, and Tim Geithner in the Treasury Department and the Fed did not even negotiate with them. And there is no justification. This was a giveaway of tens of billions of dollars to the very banks that got us into this pickle in the first place. And the problem we have is that we have a Treasury Department that seems unwilling to negotiate on behalf of the taxpayer to demand of Wall Street the fundamental changes in behavior that we need. Wall Street is still not lending to the mid-sized and small companies that will create the jobs that we need to come back. What Wall Street has been doing and been given permission to do is use that money for proprietary trading, to give it away to themselves in bonuses, and even to invest it overseas. Now, with tax dollars, that's not what they should be doing. And so there has been no other side to the bargain. Yes, we bailed them out, and that needed to be done, but as I've said since the very beginning, the question is, do we insist upon something back from them? And unfortunately, the answer has been no.
Former New York Governor Eliot Spitzer, thanks for coming.
Governor, thank you.
Appreciate it.